So, I just came back from vacation. I went to the US for the first time in about 3 years. Got to catch up with friends, family, explore. I had a nice time. And while I was there, I came across an old laptop that has been in the family for over 8 years, but it's just been sitting in a closet for the last about 2 years. And this was very interesting for me because my girlfriend has actually been wanting a laptop for a long time. Now, she's never owned a computer. She never even really had a family computer, so to speak. And so this would be her first time owning a laptop. The most she's ever had before was an iPhone. And so I decided to try and take this old laptop and see how cheaply I could turn it around and make a good computer for her. So let's see how that went. Alright, here is the laptop. As you can see, it is an Asus laptop. Asus N56J series. The PC Health app says that it is over 8 years old, which I believe because this was my first real computer. I got it in high school because I needed something for homework and general entertainment. And so after quite a bit of pleading, my mom purchased this laptop for me. Then my real dive into tech happened where I eventually wanted to build my own laptop. And so using this, I researched all the parts, I researched my build, how to build a computer, and that was where my first dive into tech really started. After I built the computer, anyone could kind of just use it. It was sitting around. My mom used it for work from home for a while until she got an upgrade through work, and this has just been sitting in a closet for about a little less than 2 years, not quite 2 years. And now the question was, could I bring some extra life into it? So I dug it up and I tested it, and I had to make a few changes along the way, so let's get into that. So my first test was to make sure that the laptop was worth bringing back. And so I ran Cinebench on it to make sure that it was performing well and also to check the thermals. So I ran Cinebench on this old laptop, my thin and light work laptop, and the gaming laptop that you normally see in front of me. And I'll put them all right here and I'll start them now. And what you can see from this is that the gaming laptop obviously wins. One, it's newer than the old laptop, has more cores than the old laptop, it has a higher power budget than the old laptop, and it also has better cooling. So it obviously went ahead. But the interesting thing to me was it compared to the Thin and Light laptop. The Thin and Light is also newer, so the single core performance is better. I have a graph of that here. But in terms of multi-core, they are within range of each other almost. And I think that's because this thing has a higher power budget and also slightly better cooling than the Thin and Light. But that told me that this computer could still be useful. So next, the question was, how do I actually make it ready to use? Alright, so now that I knew that the performance was ready, there were two things that I really was worried about with the laptop. Number one was when I first turned it on, it only showed 4 gigs of RAM. Now that was not enough. I know that the person who is going to use this, not having much computer expertise or anything, the most demanding thing I would expect her to do is YouTube and the Office suite. So while that isn't as bad as it could be, just having a few browser tabs could destroy all of that and immediately make the computer start to run sluggish. So I wanted to at least get 8, ideally 16, but at least 8 gigs to make it usable. The second upgrade was that the computer was still using the 750 gigabyte hard drive that it shipped with. Now, the number one upgrade you could do to any old computer to make it feel like it's brand new almost is an SSD upgrade. So obviously that was what I was going to do. I went out and bought the cheapest hard SSD that I could at Best Buy. Got this WD Blue for about $50 for 500 gigs, which is a pretty good deal, I thought. And the goal was to upgrade the laptop. So let's see how that goes. So now for the upgrade. The first thing I noticed when I went to upgrade the old computer was how nice it was with the easily removable battery, just like that. Always remove your battery before you work on it. The second thing I noticed was that even though it originally only showed 4 gigs of RAM, I noticed that it's going to be impossible to see on camera, but right here next to memory, it actually said 8 gigs of RAM. Now the other thing you can notice is that it has a slightly separate compartment down here. And so what was that? I went to take out the screws, and by screws I mean screw. It actually did have 2 4-gig sticks of RAM. And so just to figure that out, I just took them both out like that, cleaned the connector a little bit, was careful, very careful, and then just reseated both sticks. And that was enough. That managed to fix the problem, and all 8 gigs were showing again. And as you can see over here, it actually has just pop out these 4 screws, and you can replace the hard drive easily. Now, I already did that. As you can see, in here is actually the old hard drive from the laptop. And so this already is the WD Blue sitting in here. But I just wanted to show what a different time it was to work on computers over here. But that was all I did to touch up the computer. And with that, I booted up Windows, clean install of Windows, and it was ready to go. So with those upgrades, I can check now in Task Manager. I got all 8 gigs of RAM showing, which is, I would say, the bare minimum for a modern computer. I got the SSD showing up, but it runs snappy. The boot up times are incredibly fast. But the more important thing to me about an SSD is not just the boot up time being fast. I could live with a slower boot up time. The thing that makes an SSD really worth it to me is just the general responsiveness. The fact that once I sign in, I can immediately open an app without the minute or so chug that a hard drive computer goes through after startup. Besides that, for the computer, it's got all the connections that you would reasonably need. It's got an HDMI port over here, 4 USB Type-A ports that are 3.0 speeds, an Ethernet jack. It's got the headphone microphone jack. It's even got a DVD drive, if that tickles your fancy. And all of this for $50 in upgrades. Oh, it even has a VGA cable. And all this for a $50 upgrade. Now, if you were to go to like a thrift store, buy this old laptop, it would probably cost you a fair bit more than just the $50 in upgrades it cost me. But that begs the question, was this a worthwhile upgrade? So let's talk about that. So the question of is this worth it is a little bit more challenging. If you don't need a lot of performance, if you say only use the browser, watch YouTube, Facebook, check emails, or maybe even the Office suite, this could probably be more than enough for you. You could get a cheap old laptop, give it a little bit of love. Heck, if you even had some old RAM modules laying around from old laptops, You probably even give that an upgrade. But these older computers will be running into a problem within the next few years that I want to address first. Windows 10 will be losing its support in a few years from now. So you still get a few years of use on Windows 10, but Windows 11 has a lot of system requirements that older laptops, mostly before the Intel 8000 series, will not meet. They have a lot of new security protocols for Windows 11 that the older computers cannot meet, and so this laptop will not get Windows 11. And so that does mean that it does have a sort of a countdown for that useful lifespan where it's still getting security updates. And so what will happen to this laptop when Windows 10 loses its long-term support? You could risk it. You could continue to use Windows 10 in the same way some people risk it with Windows 7 now. So you could risk continuing to use it, but as it gets on, it'll get more buggy and it'll have more security flaws that are revealed. And another option would be that you could switch this laptop over to Linux and continue to use, say, Ubuntu or some of those long-term support Linux distros. But that's another option that you could use to keep this laptop going even longer. But if you're a Windows person through and through, I will say that these upgrades make the computer more than usable now. And if you think you'll get more than enough value out of using it over the next few years before Windows 10 loses support, then yes, I would say it is worth it. But keep in mind that clock is ticking and make sure you're getting your money's worth. So that was my adventures upgrading this old laptop. For my use case, I say that it is perfect. I love that I can still bring some extra life into this thing. But keep that in mind if this is right for you, especially with back to school going around now and maybe you're on a budget to get a good computer for college or high school. But that'll be all for this video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.